God is releasing your long-awaited blessing. Thank God in advance. There are moments in a human life when waiting becomes so familiar that it feels like furniture in the room. Quiet, heavy, always present. You have learned how to sit beside it, how to eat with it, how to sleep under its shadow. At first, you believed waiting was temporary, a short hallway between promise and fulfillment. But as the days stretched into years, you began to wonder whether the hallway was the destination itself. And yet, even now, beneath the fatigue and the unanswered questions, something stubborn remains alive in you, a small but persistent hope that refuses to die. That hope is not an accident, it is evidence. For God does not tease the human heart with desires he never intends to satisfy. He plants promises the way a gardener plants seeds, not to mock the soil, but because he knows what will rise from it in the proper season. What you have been calling delay has not been denial, and what you have been interpreting as silence has not been absence. Heaven has not forgotten your name, nor has it misplaced your address. The blessing you have long awaited is not wandering lost in the corridors of eternity. It is being prepared with a precision that love alone would consider necessary. We are often mistaken about the nature of waiting. We imagine it to be a punishment, a divine pause imposed because we have failed to qualify for immediacy. But waiting in the economy of God is rarely empty. It is a workshop. While you have been counting the days, God has been counting the ways he must strengthen you to carry what is coming. While you have been asking when, he has been shaping who. And the uncomfortable truth is that some blessings arrive only when the person receiving them has been enlarged enough on the inside to hold them without breaking. Consider how often you prayed for the result without realizing that the result required a transformation first. You asked for open doors, but you were not yet steady on your feet. You asked for increase, but humility had not finished its work. You asked for restoration, but forgiveness still needed to loosen its grip within you. God, being kind rather than hurried, chose to work deeper before he worked faster. This is not cruelty, this is care. There is a strange mercy in the long-awaited blessing. When it finally arrives, it does not merely satisfy a desire, it redeems the waiting itself. The tears that once seemed wasted are suddenly gathered into meaning. The prayers you whispered when faith felt thin are revealed to have been heard in full. You begin to see that not one moment of endurance was thrown away. God does not waste suffering, he weaves it. And now you stand closer than you think to the moment when what has lived only in hope will step into reality. The ground beneath you is shifting, though the movement is subtle enough to escape the impatient eye. Heaven often moves quietly when it is about to move decisively. The release of your blessing will not need an announcement. Its arrival will speak for itself. It will carry with it a sense of rightness, a deep recognition that this, at last, is what the waiting was for. This is why gratitude must come before the gift. To thank God in advance is not denial of pain, it is defiance of despair. It is the soul standing upright and declaring that trust is not dependent on visible evidence. Gratitude ahead of time aligns the heart with truth rather than circumstance. It says, I may not see it yet, but I know who you are. And that knowledge steadies you in ways certainty never could. Faith that waits until the blessing arrives to give thanks is understandable, but faith that gives thanks while the door is still closed is powerful. It transforms waiting from passive endurance into active expectation. When you thank God in advance, you are not pretending everything is fine, you are proclaiming that God is faithful. You are anchoring yourself to his character rather than your timeline. There is also this to be said, long-awaited blessings often arrive differently than imagined, though never less beautifully than promised. God is not limited to your mental sketches. He is an artist, not a photocopier. What he brings may exceed your expectations by arriving through paths you never would have chosen, but once it is in your hands, you will recognize that no other route could have formed you so completely for it. You may discover that the blessing is not merely what changes around you, but what has already changed within you, the patience you did not know you possessed, the compassion that grew where bitterness once lived, the quiet strength that replaced frantic striving. These are not side effects of waiting, they are part of the gift. God has been answering you in layers, and the final layer is nearer than you realize. Do not underestimate the power of endurance that has been built in you. You are not the same person who first began praying this prayer. You are deeper now, wiser, less easily shaken by appearances. You have learned to listen in the quiet, to trust without constant reassurance. These are not small things. They are the marks of someone prepared to steward a blessing well. And so when the release comes, and it will come, you will receive it with open hands rather than clenched fists. You will recognize it not as something owed, but as something entrusted. Gratitude will flow naturally then, because gratitude has already been practiced in the waiting. You will not be intoxicated by the gift, because you have already been anchored in the giver. Even now, there are threads being tied together that you cannot yet see, conversations you were not part of, decisions you did not influence, moments you never witnessed. God has been present in them all, arranging, aligning, opening and closing with deliberate care. What feels random to you is purposeful to Him. What feels late to you is precisely timed to eternity. It is tempting in the long wait to believe that God is responding to louder prayers elsewhere, that perhaps others are more deserving, more faithful, more visible. But divine love is not a limited resource that must be rationed. God does not neglect one child to bless another. Your story is not competing with anyone else's. Heaven is not crowded and grace is not scarce. What you are awaiting has your name on it, and it will not be handed to another by mistake. God is exact in His generosity. He knows where you are, and He knows what you need. He knows when the meeting of those two will bring life rather than harm. This is why you can afford to loosen your grip on anxiety. Worry assumes responsibility that was never yours to carry. There is a quiet invitation in this season to rest without resignation, to hope without striving, to trust without demanding. Rest does not mean you have given up. It means you have placed the weight of the outcome where it belongs. In that rest, your soul becomes fertile ground, ready for the arrival of what has been growing unseen. Thank God in advance, not because the road has been easy, but because He has been good. Thank Him not because you understand the timing, but because you trust the heart behind it. Gratitude becomes the language of faith when explanations are absent. It lifts your eyes from the dust of delay to the horizon of promise. Sooner than you expect, you will look back on this stretch of waiting and realize that it was not empty after all. You will see how every unanswered prayer was shaping the answer, how every closed door was guiding you toward the right one. The blessing, when it arrives, will not erase the memory of the wait, but it will illuminate it. And even now, as you stand on the threshold between what has been and what will be, there is a gentle stirring, a sense that something is about to give way, that the long-held breath may soon be released. Do not rush past this moment. Let expectation rise without forcing it into certainty. Let trust deepen without demanding proof, because God is releasing your long-awaited blessing, not as a reward for perfect faith, but as an expression of steadfast love. And as you learn to thank Him before you see it, something within you aligns with heaven's rhythm, and you begin to notice that the waiting itself is changing texture, becoming lighter, infused with a quiet joy that does not yet shout, but whispers insistently that what has been promised is drawing near, that the story is still unfolding, that the next turn in the road holds more than you have imagined, and that even now, as you listen, as you breathe, as you choose trust again, there are doors beginning to open just beyond your sight, and footsteps approaching that will soon make themselves known. And when they do, you will recognize that the sound you are hearing is not sudden at all, but the fulfillment of something that has been moving toward you all along, step by deliberate step, carried forward by a faith that refused to let go, sustained by a hope that endured the night, and guided by a God who has never once stopped working, even in the moments when you were most certain that nothing at all was happening. And as that realization settles in, you begin to understand that this is not the end of the waiting, but the transformation of it. That expectation is turning into readiness, and readiness into reception, and that what comes next will require you to remain attentive, grateful, and open, because the blessing being released is not only meant to arrive in your life, but to continue unfolding through it in ways that will call you forward again and again, inviting you to walk further into trust, further into purpose, further into the quiet certainty that the same God who has carried you this far is still leading, still shaping, still releasing, and still asking you to give thanks even now, even here, even before the final shape of the gift is fully visible, as you stand on this edge of becoming, aware that something is shifting, aware that the long night is thinning, aware that the next moment holds more than the last, and that the grace which has sustained you until now is preparing to reveal itself in forms you are only just beginning to imagine, as the story continues to open before you, drawing you onward into what is still being written, written in the quiet margins, where faith has learned to breathe without hurry. For there is a deeper work still unfolding, one that does not rush to announce itself but steadily reshapes the way you see everything that follows. You may notice that your prayers have changed. They are no longer frantic lists of needs shouted into the dark, but slower conversations, weighted with trust, shaped by a growing awareness that God is not persuaded by urgency nor moved by panic. He is moved by truth, and truth has been taking root in you during this long season. You are beginning to sense that the blessing you await is not arriving to rescue you from life, but to join you within it. God does not remove his children from the story, he strengthens them to live it well. The blessing will not erase struggle, but it will redefine it. You will no longer fight as one desperate for proof, but as one grounded in promise. There is a difference between striving for victory and standing from it, and you are being taught slowly and patiently how to stand. Many people imagine blessings as interruptions, sudden bright moments that cut through ordinary days like lightning. But more often, God releases them as a sunrise, gradual and certain, so that your eyes have time to adjust. If he revealed everything at once, you would be overwhelmed rather than grateful. So he teaches you to notice small shifts, gentle openings, quiet confirmations that something has indeed begun to move. These signs are not meant to tease you, but to train your attention. Attention itself has become part of your formation, where once you scan the horizon anxiously for change, you are learning to be present where you are. This does not mean you have stopped hoping. It means hope has stopped exhausting you. There is a calm expectancy growing in you, the kind that does not need constant reassurance. This is not resignation, this is maturity. And maturity, though rarely celebrated, is often the doorway through which the most meaningful blessings arrive. God entrusts much to those who have learned how to wait without growing bitter. Bitterness corrodes the vessel meant to carry the gift. So God, in his mercy, has been softening your heart, even as the days passed slowly. Each disappointment you survived without surrendering hope enlarged your capacity for joy. Each unanswered prayer you carried without quitting deepened your resilience. You may not have noticed it at the time, but your faith has been learning to walk without crutches. At first, you relied heavily on visible signs, on immediate results, on emotional certainty. But over time, those supports were gently removed, not to weaken you, but to strengthen you. Now your trust rests less on what you feel and more on who God is. This is a quieter faith, but it is far sturdier. When the blessing comes, it will meet you as you are now, not as you were when you first asked for it. And this version of you is better equipped, more discerning, less likely to confuse gifts with God's. You will hold the blessing with open hands, understanding that it is meant to serve love, not replace it. God has been teaching you to value the giver above the gift, so that when the gift arrives, it finds its rightful place. There is also this mystery. Sometimes the blessing you await has already begun, but it has taken a form you did not expect. God often answers prayers sideways before he answers them straight on. He prepares the ground long before the harvest is visible. He sends courage before opportunity, wisdom before responsibility, peace before resolution. These are not delays, they are foundations. If you look closely, you may see that certain doors have quietly closed behind you, doors you once tried desperately to keep open. At the time, those closures felt like losses. Now, you may begin to sense they were mercies. God was narrowing your path not to limit you but to guide you. A blessing too broadly defined can become a burden. Precision is kindness in the hands of God. You are also learning that timing is not only about events, but about alignment. A blessing released too early can become a curse, and a blessing released too late can be missed. God's timing is not arbitrary, it is relational. He releases what is needed when hearts, circumstances, and purposes intersect in ways that bring life. This is why impatience so often clouds our judgment. We see only one angle, God sees the whole. Thanking God in advance anchors you in that larger vision. It reminds you that you are part of a story still unfolding, not a mistake waiting to be corrected. Gratitude stretches your perspective beyond the immediate discomfort and reconnects you to meaning. It is an act of resistance against the lie that nothing is happening. In truth, much is happening, even now. There are conversations forming that will matter to you, though you do not yet know the names involved. There are opportunities aligning that will feel natural when they arrive, though they required countless, unseen adjustments to make space for you. There are changes within you still settling into place, adjustments of shifts of priority, quiet decisions that will later appear as turning points. None of this is wasted, none of this is random. God's work is often most profound when it feels least dramatic. He prefers roots to fireworks, depth to display, and because of that, those who wait with him are often surprised by how strong they have become without noticing. One day you realize that what once terrified you no longer has the same power. The fear has not vanished entirely, but it no longer governs you. This is evidence of growth. The blessing, when it comes, will recognize this strength. It will settle into your life as something that belongs, not as something you must defend constantly. You will not need to grasp at it, because you will trust that what God gives, He sustains. This trust frees you from the exhausting need to control outcomes. It allows you to participate without panic, and still, the waiting continues, though it has changed its tone. It is no longer sharp-edged. It has softened. You may notice moments of quiet joy breaking through, moments when you laugh without guilt, rest without fear, dream without desperation. These moments are previews, not distractions. They are reminders that your life is not on hold until the blessing arrives. Life is happening now, and God is present in it now. There is a temptation when waiting has been long to believe that joy must be postponed, that celebration would somehow be premature or naive. But joy does not delay faith, it expresses it. To thank God in advance is to allow joy into the waiting, not as denial, but as declaration. It says that your hope is alive, that your trust is active, that your heart is still open. As you practice this gratitude, something subtle happens. You become less preoccupied with measuring progress and more attentive to presence. You begin to notice God not only at the destination you long for, but along the path you walk each day. The ordinary becomes infused with meaning. The small becomes significant. This does not make the longing disappear, but it places it within a larger, richer context. You may find yourself less interested in comparing your journey to others. Their timelines no longer provoke the same questions or doubts. You are learning that comparison distorts calling, that another person's blessing does not diminish yours. God's generosity is not competitive. What He is doing in your life is distinct, intentional, and sufficient. There is also a deepening humility taking place, a recognition that much of what truly matters cannot be forced. You cannot rush healing. You cannot manufacture wisdom. You cannot demand transformation. These things unfold in their own time, under gentle pressure, nurtured by grace. The waiting has been teaching you cooperation rather than control. This is why, when the blessing arrives, it will not feel like an invasion. but like a continuation. It will fit into a story already shaped by trust. You will recognize it as something you have been preparing for, even on days when preparation felt like mere survival. The skills you learned just to get through the waiting will now serve you in sustaining the gift. And still, even as this release draws nearer, God does not rush you. He remains patient, attentive to every detail, careful with your heart. He does not want you to arrive breathless, exhausted from striving, unable to enjoy what He gives. He wants you whole. He wants you ready. He wants you free. So the invitation remains the same. Thank Him now, not because everything makes sense, but because He does. Thank Him not with forced cheerfulness, but with quiet trust. Let your gratitude be honest, acknowledging both longing and confidence. God does not require polished faith. He honors faithful persistence. You are allowed to admit that waiting has been hard. You are allowed to acknowledge disappointment without surrendering hope. Faith is not pretending, it is choosing. And you have been choosing again and again, often without applause, often without immediate reward. These choices matter more than you know. As you continue forward, you may notice that the question "when" begins to loosen its grip. It does not vanish entirely, but it no longer dominates. In its place grows a steadier question: who am I becoming? This shift is not accidental. It is evidence that the waiting has done its work. The blessing God is releasing will meet you at the intersection of who you are becoming and what He is doing. It will not arrive as a mere answer to a request, but as part of a relationship. You will see His fingerprints on it, the familiar patterns of His care, the echoes of lessons learned along the way. And as you recognize these things, gratitude will deepen, not just for the gift, but for the journey that shaped you to receive it. Even now, there are moments when the future feels close enough to touch, when anticipation stirs without anxiety, when hope rises gently rather than demanding attention. These moments are invitations to trust the process rather than rush the outcome. God is not late, He is thorough. So you keep walking, not aimlessly but attentively. You keep thanking, not mechanically but sincerely. You keep trusting, not blindly but relationally. And as you do, the waiting continues to transform, to open, to soften, until it becomes less about endurance and more about expectation, less about survival and more about readiness. As the story continues to unfold, as grace continues to work, as the blessing continues to draw nearer, shaped by love, timed by wisdom, and released in ways that will invite you further into faith, further into trust, further into a life that is still being written, still being formed, still moving forward with purpose, even now, even here, even as the next moment approaches without hurry, carrying with it the quiet certainty that what has been promised is still on its way, and that you are being prepared to recognize it when it arrives, to receive it when it appears, and to walk with it as the journey continues onward, deeper into meaning, deeper into trust, deeper into the unfolding goodness of God, with a patience that no longer feels like punishment, but like partnership. There is a subtle companionship forming between your heart and the unfolding will of God, a sense that you are no longer merely waiting on Him, but waiting with Him. This changes the posture of your soul. You are not standing outside a locked door, knocking until your hands ache. You are sitting beside the one who holds the key, listening as He explains why the door opens when it does. In this companionship, silence takes on a new meaning. It is no longer an empty space filled with unanswered questions, but a quiet room where trust is being taught without words. You begin to realize that God's silence is often instructional rather than dismissive. He withholds explanations not to frustrate you, but to form you. Explanations satisfy the mind for a moment. Trust reshapes the heart for a lifetime. The long wait has trained you to recognize the difference between urgency and importance. Many things once felt essential that now seem secondary, and many things you once overlooked have revealed their true weight. This refining of desire is not loss, it is clarity. God has been gently loosening your grip on what would have distracted you from what truly matters. In doing so, he has been protecting the blessing from being crowded by lesser pursuits. There is also a new tenderness in you, one born not of weakness but of understanding. You notice others who are waiting now, others who carry quiet hopes and hidden disappointments. Where once you might have offered quick answers or well-meaning cliches, you now offer presence. You have learned that pain does not always need solutions, sometimes it needs witnesses. This compassion is not incidental. It is one of the fruits of your waiting, and it will shape the way the blessing flows through your life when it comes, for blessings are never meant to terminate in the one who receives them. They are meant to pass through, to become sources of light for others who are still navigating the dark. God has been expanding your capacity not only to receive, but to give. The long-awaited blessing will arrive carrying responsibility as well as relief, purpose as well as pleasure. And because of the waiting, you will recognize this responsibility not as a burden, but as a calling. You may also find that your imagination has changed. It is less frantic, less crowded with desperate scenarios. It has become quieter, more spacious, more open to surprise. This is important, because God often exceeds our expectations, not by amplifying them, but by redirecting them. He gives better than what we imagined, but better often looks different at first glance. A quieter joy, a deeper peace, a more enduring fulfillment. As you move through your days, now there is a growing sense. Say that the blessing is not merely approaching from ahead, but rising from within the story you are already living. You begin to notice how past experiences, even painful ones, are aligning into something coherent. Pieces that once seemed incompatible are finding their place. God is a master of integration. He redeems not by erasing the past, but by weaving it into meaning. There are memories you once avoided that now surface without the same sting. They have been softened by perspective, reframed by grace. You can look at them now and see not only what was lost, but what was gained: strength, wisdom, empathy, discernment. These are not consolation prizes. They are part of the inheritance you are receiving, part of the blessing that has been forming quietly all along. You are also learning to live without constant confirmation. There was a time when you needed signs at every turn, reassurance at every step. Now, you move forward even when certainty is absent. This does not mean you have become careless. It means you have become confident in the one who leads you. Faith has shifted from being an emotional state to being a settled orientation of the heart. In this orientation, fear still visits, but it no longer resides. Doubt still whispers, but it no longer dictates. You have learned that faith is not the absence of these things, but the decision not to be ruled by them. This decision, repeated quietly over time, has been shaping you more than any single breakthrough ever key. The blessing God is releasing will meet you in this steadiness. It will not need to compete with fear for your attention. It will find room to breathe, and because you are no longer frantic, you will be able to notice its nuances, its layers, its unfolding impact. You will not rush past it on your way to the next desire, because the waiting has taught you how to savor. There is also an increasing simplicity in your prayers. They have become less ornate, less concerned with impressing heaven or persuading God. You speak more honestly now, sometimes with words, sometimes without. You have learned that God hears the posture of the heart as clearly as the language of the mouth. This honesty has deepened the relationship, making space for trust that does not depend on outcomes. You may find yourself thanking God now for things that once would have seemed insignificant: a moment of peace, a timely conversation, a quiet assurance that arrives without explanation. These small thanksgivings are not distractions from the larger blessing, they are preparations for it. Gratitude enlarges the soul, it makes room, and still the longing remains. It has not disappeared, nor should it. Desire is not the enemy of faith, despair is. Longing keeps you attentive, keeps you oriented toward hope. The difference now is that longing no longer feels like a wound. It feels like a stretch, a reaching towards something that is real, something that exists beyond imagination. There are days when the waiting feels almost invisible, when life flows with a gentle rhythm and the ache recedes into the background. And there are days when it returns sharply, reminding you of what has not yet arrived. Both kinds of days belong to the journey. Neither invalidates the other. God is present in both. What is changing is your response. On the harder days, you recover more quickly. You no longer spiral as deeply or remain stuck as long. You have learned how to return to trust, how to re-anchor yourself when emotions surge. This resilience is not accidental. It has been forged through repetition, through choosing faith again and again when it would have been easier to withdraw. The blessing will not erase the memory of those choices. Instead, it will honor them. It will arrive not as a replacement for your faithfulness, but as its fruit. You will recognize, perhaps with quiet awe, that the strength you gained while waiting is now sustaining you as you receive. There is also a growing awareness that the blessing will not mark the end of the story. It will mark a transition, a new chapter with its own challenges and invitations. God is not preparing you for a finish line, but for continued partnership. The same trust that carried you through waiting will be needed to steward what comes next. This realization keeps you humble. It reminds you that dependence on God does not decrease with blessing, it deepens. You will need His wisdom just as much then as you do now, perhaps even more. The waiting has been teaching you how to listen, how to pause, how to discern. These skills will serve you well in the days ahead. As you reflect on this, you may notice a quiet confidence settling in. Not arrogance, not presumption, but assurance. A sense that whatever comes, you will not face it alone. The waiting has proven this to you again and again. God has met you in uncertainty, in disappointment, in silence. He will not abandon you in fulfillment. So you continue to thank Him in advance, not as a ritual, but as a recognition. You recognize His faithfulness in the past, His presence in the present, His promise for the future. Gratitude becomes less about specific outcomes and more about alignment with reality. It aligns you with truth rather than fear. You may also begin to see that the blessing you await is not isolated. It is connected to other people, other stories, other purposes. When it arrives, it will ripple outward in ways you cannot yet predict. This is why God has been careful with its timing. He is not only considering you, He is considering the web of lives your blessing will touch. This broader perspective brings a new kind of peace. You realize that your waiting has meaning beyond your personal fulfillment. It has been part of a larger design, one that values interconnectedness over immediacy. You are not being delayed, you are being positioned. Positioning often looks like stillness from the outside, but it involves subtle adjustments beneath the surface. God has been aligning your values, your habits, your relationships, your inner life. Alignments are not dramatic, but they are decisive. They determine not only when the blessing comes, but how it functions in your life. As this understanding deepens, impatience loses some of its urgency. You still desire movement, still hope for resolution, but you are less tempted to force outcomes. You trust the process because you trust the one guiding it. This trust does not dull your longing, it steadies it. And so the days continue, ordinary and extraordinary woven together. You wake, you work, you rest, you pray. The waiting no longer dominates every thought, but it remains a quiet companion. It has taught you to live fully even without resolution, to find meaning even without closure. This too is preparation. Life rarely offers complete closure. Blessings do not arrive in a vacuum, they arrive in the midst of ongoing stories. The waiting has taught you how to receive without demanding perfection. It has taught you how to celebrate without illusion. There is a sense now that something is nearing completion, though not in a way that can be measured by calendars or signs. It is an inward readiness, a settling of the heart. You are less restless, less frantic. You feel more at home in trust. This readiness is not something you achieved, it is something that has grown. God has been patient with you as this growth unfolded. He has not rushed you, even when you begged for speed. He has honored the pace of transformation, knowing that rushed growth is fragile. What grows slowly endures. And so, as the story continues, as the blessing draws closer in ways seen and unseen, you remain attentive. You remain grateful, you remain open, not because you are certain of every detail, but because you are certain of God's character. And so, as you stand at this quiet threshold between promise and fulfillment, let your heart rest in the truth that nothing in your waiting has been wasted. Every prayer whispered in the dark, every tear shed in private, every moment you chose trust over bitterness has been gathered by God and woven into something purposeful and good. What you have long awaited is not approaching by chance, nor will it arrive empty-handed. It comes carrying meaning, timing, and grace shaped perfectly for you. Do not fear the wait, and do not doubt the promise. Lift your eyes, steady your heart, and thank God even now before you see the full shape of the answer, because the same faithful God who sustained you through the waiting is now bringing the blessing to life. And when it arrives, you will recognize it not only as a gift fulfilled, but as a testimony of His unwavering faithfulness, His perfect timing, and His enduring love over every season of your life.